Let's talk about the WNBA and the league's demise now that Caitlin Clark is no longer going to play this season. The WNBA and the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, all the way up and including, let's just keep it real, Kathy Engelbert, Adam Silver, the National Basketball Association, everybody that participated in the farce.
Caitlin Clark's season has officially come to an end, and many believe the WNBA is the reason why. Since May, she's been struggling with one injury after another, starting with a quad strain, then groin problems in June and July, and finally a bone bruise in August. Her body just couldn't take it anymore. But this isn't only bad news for Clark, it's a huge problem for the entire league. Fans say the WNBA failed to protect its biggest star, pointing to bad refereeing, poor communication, and players constantly targeting her on the court. Now, supporters are angry, asking for answers, refunds, and even calling for boycotts. Meanwhile, the league has mostly stayed silent. How did things go so wrong in just 13 games? And what does Commissioner Kathy Engelbert have to say about it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Is the WNBA really to blame? Let's talk about it.
Caitlin Clark, out for the remainder of the 2025 season, something we all think we knew was coming after what Stephanie White said earlier today. We couldn't be too sure until we see it for ourselves. And with this announcement from the GOAT's mouth herself, Caitlin Clark won't be returning this season, nor if the Indiana Fever make the playoff.
How many times did the referees just stand there and watch while Caitlin Clark got shoved into a screen, grabbed by her jersey, or knocked off balance and then acted like nothing happened? That's what frustrates fans the most. Everyone saw it live, play after play. Clark kept getting hit while running around screens, bumped into defenders, and even double-teamed before she could touch the ball. The refs had so many chances to call a foul, but they didn't over and over again. It wasn't just one team being too aggressive either. As the Washington Post later reported, the whole league seemed to be going after her, targeting the player who had quickly become the face of women's basketball.
Well, it all started last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlin Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail for what's going on.
The league's biggest star, the one responsible for boosting not just her team but nearly half of the WNBA's TV ratings, was completely left unprotected. Think about it. One player was packing arenas in cities like Dallas, Las Vegas, New York, and Chicago. She should have been treated like the valuable investment she clearly was. Instead, while networks paid record amounts to air her games, referees wouldn't even give her the basic calls that every other star player gets in other leagues. Game after game, she was hit off the ball, grabbed before she could move, and pushed around on defense, contact that would have been called a foul for anyone else.
The WNBA and all the people that follow the WNBA and try to promote the WNBA don't understand that Caitlin Clark's game resonates with us. I say this every day, and every day I got to deal with somebody else dumb in the media. Caitlin Clark's game resonates because she's got flair, she's got flash, she's got style. I said this before, and I'll say this again. We saw Sue Bird's game. We saw Diana Taurasi's game. Kim Mulkey was Sue Bird before Sue Bird became Sue Bird. We've seen it. We haven't seen Caitlin Clark.
This wasn't just frustrating to watch, it was dangerous. All those constant cheap shots didn't just make Caitlin Clark sore, they slowly wore her down week after week. Her quad injury in May and her groin pain in June weren't random. They came from repeated hits, awkward twists, and rough landings that she was never protected from. Those kinds of plays cause stress injuries that can't fully heal without real rest. But Clark couldn't take that break. The league needed her on the court to keep arenas full and fans watching.
And last year, I noticed how much it was just Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark was taking all the hits. Caitlin Clark was taking all the abuse. But this year they've added Sophie Cunningham, she gets more flagrant fouls on her than anybody in the league besides Caitlin Clark. And Aaliyah Boston, she's been taking hits as well. But the worst thing is the consistency. So they don't call flagrant fouls, or most of the time, Caitlin Clark could be held for an entire game at a time. They don't call fouls. They don't call common fouls.
That's why fans are calling the league hypocritical. The WNBA proudly bragged about record ticket sales, sold-out merchandise, and new sponsorships, all thanks to Caitlin Clark. But when it came to doing the most basic thing, protecting the very player bringing in all that money, they treated her like she was just another rookie. The truth is, she wasn't. By letting her take constant hits game after game, the league didn't just affect the outcomes of matches, they risked her health and put the entire season at stake.
The folks that cover the NBA, these people that play in the NBA, these people that cover the NBA, there, I said these people, all of you, black, white, green, purple, why don't you understand a very simple thing? Her game is dynamic. Like Diana Taurasi was like a jackass to Caitlin Clark. Why? Her game is what people are drawn to. And then you go to the personality. Her game is different than any WNBA woman ever. And she wins, and she shoots from deep. It's no different than Steph Curry. How many times we got to say it?
So, what happens when your biggest star, your golden goose, can't play anymore? What happens when the league refuses to call fouls, and your top player ends up limping instead of leading the game? The truth is, the referee's negligence didn't just affect one game's outcome, it set the stage for Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury. And the anger that started on the court quickly spread among fans and media. Looking back, it almost feels like her sophomore season was doomed from the start. During training camp in May, reports already mentioned her quad tightening, something most players would rest to avoid further harm. But instead, Clark was pushed into every practice, event, and marketing appearance as the face of the league. Within 2 months, that strain turned into a groin injury, and by July, it became a full tear on her right side. Then came the announcement no one wanted to hear: Caitlin Clark was out for the season. Her downfall wasn't caused by one single moment, it was the result of a long chain of bad decisions that never gave her body the chance to recover.
I mean, it's a gut punch that basically encompasses an entire season of them. The Fever have lost so many players to injury, but obviously none bigger than Clark. And there was such a weight for this second season after her magnificent rookie season. And then, you know, the anticipation of her possibly coming back, only for that not to happen, takes a lot of air out of the room, obviously takes a lot of energy out of the fans, and is a devastating blow for not just the Fever and the WNBA.
What's most frustrating is that Caitlin Clark never really had a stretch of games where she was completely healthy. She was listed as day-to-day at least 3 different times, and each time the league called it precautionary, as if that made things better. But in the WNBA, precaution seemed to mean giving their biggest star just enough time for a quick treatment, wrapping her up in tape, and sending her back out to play that same weekend. It was like watching someone try to run on one leg while being told everything was fine.
Clark, a 2-time All-Star and the 2024 WNBA Rookie of the Year, has been sidelined suffering a right groin injury during the Fever's 87-77 win over the Connecticut Sun on July 15th. If you guys remember that game, Caitlin Clark put the team on her back in the winding minutes to give the Indiana Fever that lead. Clark also suffered a bone bruise at a later date during her recovery process.
What's most frustrating is that Caitlin Clark never really had a stretch of games where she was completely healthy. She was listed as day-to-day at least 3 different times, and each time the league called it precautionary, as if that made things better. But in the WNBA, precaution seemed to mean giving their biggest star just enough time for a quick treatment, wrapping her up in tape, and sending her back out to play that same weekend. It was like watching someone try to run on one leg while being told everything was fine.
Caitlin has worked so hard throughout this time, doing everything possible to recover and return to the court, but ultimately, time is not on our side, said Indiana Fever COO and GM Amber Cox. While we will continue working with Caitlin and provide her with every resource we have available, there is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return, and her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. We are looking forward to having her back at full strength to start the 2026 season. Clark appeared in 13 games during the regular season, averaging 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, while helping lead the team to the 2025 WNBA Commissioner's Cup title.
Think about all the hours Caitlin Clark said she spent trying to get healthy again, hours in the gym working to strengthen the muscles around her injury, only to end up right back where she started. While fans kept hearing reports about her likely return, those inside the locker room knew her body wasn't healing the way it needed to. Meanwhile, stadiums kept promoting games featuring Clark, and fans bought tickets expecting to see her play. The truth was, she was never close to 100%. That gap between what fans were told and what was really happening hurts the most.
And this is what Caitlin wrote. I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. This has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way fans continue to show up for me and the fever brought me so much joy and important perspective. I'm so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through the adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot in the playoffs.
So, was money put ahead of Caitlin Clark's health? It's hard to see it any other way. The Indiana Fever depended on her to sell out arenas, and the WNBA counted on her to boost TV ratings. Yet, no one stepped in when the warning signs started showing. Clark's season didn't end because of one random accident. It fell apart after just 13 games due to a long string of bad, short-sighted decisions. And her collapse didn't just end her breakout year, it also slowed down the league's financial momentum. When Commissioner Cathy Engelbert finally spoke about Clark's season-ending injury, fans could tell something was off. Instead of sounding like a leader addressing a major crisis, her statement came across like a carefully worded PR message, full of polished optimism but empty of accountability. There was no real admission that poor officiating or the lack of player protection had anything to do with what happened.
This is on your head, Cathy Engelbert, and the rest of the WNBA Players Association executive leadership who failed to hold officials and players accountable for the barbaric style of play the Fever and Caitlin Clark have had to endure this year. Cathy, resign.
That disconnect is what really hurt. Caitlin Clark went from carrying the league with record-breaking ratings to sitting on the injury list for months. Instead of hearing the commissioner admit, yes, we made mistakes, and here's how we'll fix them, Cathy Engelbert shifted the focus back to the same safe topics: expansion, revenue, and constructive dialogue. That might sound fine in a business meeting, but fans saw the real issue. The referees working under her watch had failed to stop the repeated physical targeting of one player. And instead of addressing it or promising accountability, she chose to ignore it completely.
A bunch of players and coaches over the last few days have complained without being fine-worthy about officiating. I just want to see about your thoughts on if officiating is an issue and how it can be improved. It's clear there seems to be problems or disconnect between what players and coaches feel and what officials are actually calling.
It feels even more insulting when you realize how often Cathy Engelbert talks about league growth every time she's in front of a camera, growth that was built almost entirely on Caitlin Clark's shoulders. While Clark was taking hit after hit and referees kept ignoring it, Engelbert was busy celebrating record attendance in May and June. But by August, when those same arenas were filled with frustrated fans demanding refunds, she was still talking about profits instead of taking responsibility. To the supporters who had poured their money, time, and excitement into this season, it felt like the commissioner was living in a completely different reality.
You know, as a fan of sports for 60 years now, I know that, no one's ever happy with officiating. All sports deal with it, but we're working hard to make sure we're putting best product out on the court, and our officiating then follows that.
Backlash was quick and fierce. On social media, even longtime WNBA supporters said that Cathy Engelbert's silence about referee accountability proved the league didn't care about Caitlin Clark's safety. Some fans called it a betrayal, while others took action by demanding refunds and canceling their ticket orders. What began as disappointment over Clark's injury soon turned into open anger toward league leadership. Engelbert had a chance to connect with fans, admit that officiating had been a problem, and promise better protection for players in the future. Instead, she offered vague, empty statements that only made people more frustrated.
They play against Breanna Stewart. She goes to the line 14 times. Asia Wilson goes to the line 13 times. And Aaliyah Boston can't play 20 minutes in a game without being on the bench in foul trouble. That's another problem that we're dealing with. But like I said, this year, it's not just Caitlin Clark. If you wear that Indiana Fever jersey, consider it done. The refs are not going to be fair, and they are going to cheat and do whatever it takes to do what the higher-ups say.
Fans now see Kathy Engelbert as the face of a league that cares more about public image than player health, a league that used its biggest star as a marketing tool instead of protecting her as a long-term investment. That realization has turned frustration into a movement. Talk of boycotts isn't just online chatter anymore, it's organized and aimed at hurting playoff attendance. Engelbert's empty statements didn't calm fans, they made things worse, showing how out of touch she was with the real issues hurting the league. And once that disconnect set in, the financial fallout came fast. After Clark's injury announcement, the market collapsed almost overnight. All-Star Game tickets that sold for over $200 in June dropped to barely $60, and resale sites were flooded with fans trying to get rid of seats they had planned for months. This wasn't just any All-Star weekend either, it was supposed to be in Indiana, Clark's home state, the stage the league had hyped as her big national moment. But within hours, all that excitement vanished, leaving the event feeling empty and directionless.
We've got Colin Cowherd saying, you know what? Guess what I didn't talk about on my show this year? The WNBA. Guess why? He just come out and said it yesterday. Because Caitlin Clark was not playing. That's why. He said, I led my show, my biggest, largest national sports radio show in the country. I led my show with Caitlin Clark 6 times last year. I mean, you don't lead a show with anybody unless they can draw.
Fans who had spent big money expecting to see Caitlin Clark compete and be celebrated as the face of the league were now demanding refunds. Their frustration wasn't just about losing money, it was about feeling misled. For weeks, the WNBA kept labeling her as day-to-day, even though insiders already knew her chances of returning were slim. In the end, it didn't look like bad luck. It looked like the league was trying to squeeze every last dollar before the truth came out. That desperation had been visible long before her injury announcement. The WNBA had moved several Indiana Fever road games to larger arenas because Clark's name alone sold out tickets. Teams that usually drew 6,000 or 7,000 fans were suddenly booking NBA-sized venues and advertising those games as major events. But after Clark was officially ruled out, those same arenas faced refund demands, angry fans, and empty seats. Many people didn't even wait, they cancelled or resold their tickets right away, and prices on resale sites showed just how quickly the panic spread.
The ticket prices. The demand fell off a cliff. And it's not just the on-court product that suffers without number 22, Caitlin Clark. The entire weekend's economic opportunities have felt the fallout.
What made everything worse was the deep sense of betrayal. Fans had believed the league's hopeful updates, bought tickets thinking Caitlin Clark would be back soon, and paid premium prices just to see her play. When those promises turned out to be empty, it became obvious that the league had used her name to make as much money as possible. That realization shattered fans' trust completely.
For the last 2 weeks, Stephanie White knew where this was going to end up. I would say for the last month or so, they kind of had a feeling where this was going to go. The main issue, another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. Another day-to-day injury that turns into a season ender. And if you don't call that a lack of transparency, I don't know what to call that.
And the financial damage went far beyond ticket sales. Attendance dropped in every city where Caitlin Clark wasn't playing. TV networks that had dedicated hundreds of hours of primetime coverage to her games saw their ratings fall almost immediately. Sponsors who had invested heavily in the Clark effect were now attached to matchups that were losing popularity week after week. This wasn't a slow decline, it was a sudden, clear collapse that revealed just how much of the WNBA's success depended on a single player.
I've easily said 2 months, 1 to 2 months. Be evaluated in the next 6 weeks. Instead, they played this day-to-day, game-time decision, probable, questionable nonsense for the last 8 weeks. And that is why fans are so pissed off for the most part. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I know if they were upfront and didn't BS us, people wouldn't be that angry at the organization, at least not as angry as they are now.
The anger quickly turned into action. Fans began calling for boycotts of playoff games, promising to leave arenas half empty. The excitement and optimism that once surrounded the season had turned into pure frustration. The WNBA wasn't just missing its biggest star, it was watching its entire business model fall apart in real time. And that leads to a bigger question. If things look this unstable now, what does the future hold for Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, and the WNBA itself? Clark's season didn't fall apart just because of injuries, it happened because the league failed to protect her. In doing so, they broke the trust of the fans who kept the league alive. That's the real damage here. Fans don't want polished statements, they want accountability, fair officiating, and a commissioner who will stand up for the players. Without that, boycotts could destroy the playoffs before they even start. Still, there's hope. Kelsey Mitchell continues to compete every night. Aaliyah Boston is stepping up as a leader. Lexi Hull keeps pushing forward. And one thing is certain, Caitlin Clark will return stronger than ever in 2026. Let us know in the comments if you think the WNBA is to blame for this situation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new update. Click the video on your screen, and we'll see you in the next one.